Say Tumbbad, Tumbbad, by the.
I don't know if that's how it goes, Mark, but
No,
we are.
that's
What are you
that's not
singing?
that. Well, no, it's from one of my favorite musicals of all time, Moulin Rouge. So,
Oh,
yeah, so
I
they sing. Yeah, they sing. It's during the play that ended up getting altered. It's the altered version of the play where the Sultan wins at the end. That the rat guy changed this play on all the artists. So
I saw Moulin Rouge 22 years ago, whatever,
Mm.
and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, that's
But
okay.
I do know what we are here to talk about tonight, and that is Tumbbad. It is an
Tumbbad.
Indian horror film from 2018. Why are we talking about Tumbbad? Well, because for those who are joining us, last month, Earth's Mightiest Critics took a look at a film called RRR, which is SS Rajamouli's amazing historical epic action adventure fantasy historical drama. It's a masala film. I came to learn that in the course of the ensuing month. And yeah, it's my favorite film of the year. And I thought, what else am I missing in terms of Indian cinema? So from then on, I decided every month I'm going to watch an Indian film, all different kinds of genres, because there's several doors that need to be kicked open so I can have my mind blown in romance and fantasy and action. This month, because it's October, it's scary season. Of course, we're going to look at horror. So that live stream went like crazy viral for Kicking the Seat anyway. Today it just crossed 22,000 views with just over
Wow.
600 likes. So people are responding to it. And when I put out the feeler in one of my subsequent videos, I'm like, what horror movie would people like to see us talk about? Tumbbad was overwhelmingly recommended. So decided to check it out. And Mark, the movie man Krawczyk from the Spoiler Room podcast and Special Mark Productions, and officially the backbone of Wisconsin horror. Mark, do you have?
I do. I have.
You have it there.
Yeah, I have my trophy. Yes, you had to bring it up, did you? I would just.
Yes, it is a trophy he won this past weekend for being the backbone of Wisconsin horror. It's a backbone in a beer stein.
Yes, it is a backbone in a bit with an eye.
Oh, so with an eye, of course.
We've called him Vert.
Yes,
and he's in a beer stein because Wisconsin. So
yes,
there you go.
So I'm honored to have you here, sir. And we're going to be talking about Tumbbad. So this is, of course, I had never heard of this movie before. After having finished it, I don't wonder why, because this isn't something that was a blockbuster here in the States. I didn't have time to do a lot of research on it, so I don't know how it fared, in other territories. But I was really knocked out by this movie. It's a horror film. I will say it's not scary, but it's very weird and unsettling, and it has a lot of great ideas, which we don't typically get in regular, I'll just call them mainstream horror films. So we'll get into what it's all about. But Mark, first of all, I'm done rambling. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. I am here. I've watched the film, ready to talk cinema. I enjoy all kinds of cinema, so I'm definitely looking forward to talking to this because I watched it just today, this afternoon. I got home from work early because I started my day at 3 a.m. and I'm here.
And you got done talking to me at 11 o'clock last night, so that's the kind of day you're having.
I did. I run on fumes, man. That's what.
Well, hopefully Tumbbad gave you some nice nerve jitters to kind of help wake you up this afternoon. So this movie has a surprising connection to RRR, and that they both start in the year 1918. And this is very much takes place in the backdrop is British occupation. You've got this town called Tumbbad. Actually, we open with this beautiful kind of like it's a CGI rendering of a statue or a shrine to the goddess of prosperity. And the legend, as it is read to us by a father talking to his young son, kind of off screen, is that the goddess of prosperity had a child named Hastar, and the 160 million other gods that were created, I guess, at the beginning of time, didn't care for Hastar too much, because in one hand of the goddess of prosperity, there is ever abundance. I believe it was grain or wheat.
Mhm.
And in the other hand, it was ever flowing gold, represented by gold coins. So it's prosperity in, I guess, like nourishment, and also, we'll call it material wealth.
Yeah.
So Hastar got to, if I have this correct, got to the gold, but
Right.
before it could get to the grain, the gods intervened, and tried to essentially kill Hastar. The mother hid the god, the young god. Oh, right, there goes my camera. Hold on a second.
It's okay.
Oh boy, I love this
The
little problem.
spirits don't want you to talk about
I
that.
know I've been banished, Mark, from my own show.
Hastar doesn't want you to talk.
Yeah, can you
Doesn't
still?
want you to be seen anyway. We
There
can
you
still
go.
hear you, but there
Okay,
you go.
good. I'm back now. Sorry about that. But so the goddess of prosperity hid Hastar away in her womb, which was essentially the bowels of the earth, and the condition of him being able to be alive and not destroyed is that he could not be known about, written about, worshipped, basically forgotten and left in the bowels of this. Of essentially inside this castle, this fortress, essentially in the town of Tumbbad. And there's a curse that hangs over this town, in that it is perpetually raining. It's always gloomy and clouding and downpouring, almost as a warning to the outside world. But as we open the film, there is a mother and her two boys, and they're carrying after. There's an old man and there's an old woman. They're both in very, very bad states, especially the old woman. She's chained up. She's essentially become a monster. And through a course of events, one of the young boys dies pretty horribly and tragically. And the mom takes the surviving son and leaves town, makes him promise never to return to Tumbbad ever. And he's like, why? Because there's so much gold and riches that are foretold to be buried within the depths of this, I guess, fortress, that the family is sort of hanging out there for years at the promise of getting access to this unimaginable wealth. So the little boy is naturally disappointed. But we cut to years later, and he's a young man who wants to return to Tumbbad because now he's ready to go spelunking and find this treasure. And that's kind of where we pick up. Mark, what did you make of the kind of the opening of this film?
Well, the first chapter was interesting. The mom does has to do some very unpleasant things for the very old man who lives in the mansion where this that's above Hastar, which nobody's quite sure yet. There were legends that there's a treasure beneath that mansion, but no one's been quite proven it, except for the one gold coin, which he keeps teasing that he's going to give the kid's mom, after she's given him so many hand jobs, basically, or other things.
I was shocked when they kind of introduce her. I'm like, she's not doing what I think she's doing,
and she is.
She was, yeah,
she
wow.
was. And you get the impression she's done more than that, because she refers, one of the kids refers to the old man as his dad. So they drop a lot of it's like, wow, there's a lot of things going on here just for that one gold piece. And I liked it. I didn't expect it to be 1918. Again, we're starting there. I loved the old hag, the fact that they had to feed her at a specific time. If you didn't, she would start getting hungry for other things, like the kids.
Yes.
And I liked the design and the makeup on her, how she was kind of, she was getting wooden. And we find out later in chapter 2 what happens if you don't keep feeding grandma. And we also find out later why grandma is the way she is. It is because of Hastar. And yeah, it just kept me intrigued. It was really an interesting story. It gave me, some vibes of a couple previous, horror films. But overall, yeah, I liked it. It kept me interested. I'm like, okay, where are we going with this? Of course, I mean, when the kid said, "Yes, mom, I won't go back to the village. You're just getting crazy because of your loss of my brother. I will not go back." Of course, he's gonna go back. You know, he's gonna go back. I didn't expect the time jump between the first and second chapters. That was a pleasant surprise. I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna kind of go through this person's life, you know, and when he meets up grandma later, because it's like 15 years later, so it's 1933, is when you know, he goes back to the mansion and he discovers that the legend of the wealth is true, but he also discovered grandma, who was that was wonderful. I'm sorry, creepy but wonderful.
Well, yeah, because he goes, we don't see a whole lot of what's going on with this estate in that first
No.
chapter. And we only do see the one coin.
Mhm.
It's almost a tease, like, yeah, there's more of this, but I believe that coin that the old man had was being actually held by one of the dough dolls, which
Right.
becomes very much more. This is, I'm sidetracking here, but because there's a lot to talk about, but this is a movie that demands to be seen, I think, more than once, because
Mhm.
even just going through chapter 1 with 1918 when they're still kids, I'd almost forgotten about all of that by the time because this movie takes so many twists and turns and becomes more about like the subsequent generations that you kind of want to go back and look for, clues or
Mhm.
appreciate a different context with a second viewing. But so yeah, Vinayak goes, he's the boy who's grown up to be the man. He goes back to Tumbbad, and he goes down into the depths of this. It's like a well, and then there's another well, and he sees the grandmother. She's in this kind of crypt, but she's had all of this vines and not exactly shrubbery because there's a lot of dirt, but essentially trees growing up out of her and extending up into the world. Um, and he is, he gets a lot of coin and goes back to the village where he lives at full time with his wife,
And he has
and
angry makeup sex.
very angry makeup sex. Well, that's
Well,
the thing is there's all these there's different subplots that don't,
mhm.
it's almost like flavoring. They don't become like crazy important, except in these sort of offbeat ways you're not expecting. Because when he shows back up, I guess he's been gone for a few days. She's like, she makes, I guess, bread because she's like grinding flour and or
She's
grinding.
making flour. They're
Yeah, she's
making
making flour.
flour and out of her home so she can make ends meet because he's been gone for days. We don't know how many days. I'm assuming it's been more than just a few days. I mean, he's been probably gone for a while because he had
Yeah,
to take a bus out to where the Tumba is,
right.
and they're living in
Pune.
Pune, excuse me. They're living in Pune, and even when his mom was going to take him to Pune, it sounded like it was quite a trip. So he's been gone for a while. She needed to make ends meet, so she's selling flour out of her home, and yeah, that ticks him off because his wife is suddenly becoming a, uh, uh, you know, earning income.
Right. He
he
says, you want to be an independent woman now. And he's like, I think
Mhm.
he slaps her or something, but then they cut to the makeup sex, as you mentioned.
Well,
And
after he shows the gold, and then they tussle upstairs, and then yeah, then there's makeup sex. She's like, the neighbors will hear, and he's like, ah, who cares? So, yeah.
well, so he gets this money, and then there's a bit of a, I can't remember exactly when the time jump happens, but some time passes. Actually, I don't know if we get a chapter 3, do we? Is it just the two
No,
chapters?
you do get you get the third chapter. It's just final chapter, it says, but it's the third chapter.
Mm.
But before that, we learn about how he's in debt and what's kind of driven him to look for this wealth. And he's in debt with this one guy. Sounds like a loan shark of sorts.
Yeah,
And
Raghav. He's into a bunch
Ragav,
of different business. I think he mentions
right?
opium, and he's just kind of a guy who can get stuff for people.
Right. Well,
Uh,
he was trying to get an opium permit from the ruling
oh,
British
that was what it was. Yeah.
government, and they were just holding it over his head. They were kept teasing him. Oh yeah, the one guy, the one British soldier who talked to him, he's like, oh sure, I'm in connections. Just basically stringing the guy along. He's stringing him along. This you get the feeling this British soldier's never going to give him the permit. He just is using this guy to get things, because he retrieves items for the soldier, and he doesn't have to pay because he's like, oh, I'll hook you up with that opium permit. Meanwhile, then he gets promoted, and then suddenly that connection is going to be lost, and now he's connected though with our hero, who has this massive income of gold suddenly.
Right. And so the tables are sort of turned, because now Vinayak has all of this wealth, and Raghav is the one who's just, it's not that he's poor, but he's on the verge of like losing what status he has, because Cooper, who's the officer, says, well, you've got 2 days until I'm out of here, and then you're not going to the guy who's replacing me isn't going to necessarily be sympathetic to your needs. So Raghav ends up going to Tumbbad. First, he hooks up Vinayak and his family with a maid. Yes, who he pays something like 800 rupees, I think, to come stay at the house.
2 nights, yeah,
for 2 nights. And it comes out that she is just a distraction to kind of seduce Vinayak, to keep him busy while Raghav takes, and yeah, you're right. So it takes him like 2 days, I guess, to get on the bus out to Tumbbad, so he can go and look for this wealth, because he knows, I guess, about the legend, and he's he figures out because he's seen the coins. So cut to the compound, the mansion, whatever. This is where we get a really good view of what's going on, even in the depths beneath where Grandma was interred, because he goes down into the ground, and then he sees the kind of the shrine, the statue to the goddess of prosperity, opens that up. It's like a giant, carved stone, well.
Chest,
and then there's another cavern that leads down into another cavern, which is where you get the great, like, David Cronenberg-esque chasm or cavern with all, like, the walls are pulsating and sort of breathing, and everything is red, and there's like veins going everywhere. And he gets down there like, what is this? And there's like a little like a jar that's there. I can't remember, was the dough doll in there? I know he encounters Hastar in that situation.
Well, he encounters Hastar with and our guy arrives soon after.
Well, yeah, because he's sort of tracking him. He sees him go down there, and he's watching for him to come out. Yeah,
right. And yeah, that's where we learn how he's doing it. And the loan shark. I keep forgetting the names. I apologize, but the loan shark guy, if I remember correctly, observes how he's doing it, how our guy's doing it, and we learn about the circle of salt, and he goes down there with the dough.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
and that's where, when he gets, that's how we learn.
Attacked.
Yeah, and that's how we learn to where he gets the coin from. Is we watch him do that, and then his buddy down there, he's like, "Oh, hey!" and he goes for more, and he gets attacked, and then he gets and then the Hastar is not quite happy, and his the guy gets thrown against the wall and
he gets absorbed into the wall. It reminded me again of something out of Cronenberg, or like the original Alien, the kind of cut scene where you see the nest, and the different crew members are sort of being enveloped and evolving or devolving back into the alien eggs. Like, you see his body and he's kind of struggling, but then you see his feet are like sticking out like at straight angles that are perpendicular to his body, and it's all very gruesome. But there's this it's almost like an anti-curse or a spell or something, because if there is someone who is in the thrall of this force, because if you get bitten or attacked by Hastar, then you sort of become what the grandmother becomes, or what Raghav is becoming, in the wall, just sort of this angry creature. And the curse is, go to sleep or Hastar will get you, or will come for you, and it just immediately knocks them out and allows the other person to kind of get away. But what's really fascinating about this is, amidst all of this, there's a time jump, and we see that Raghav has been taking money from Tumbbad and going back to Pune for years. He
Mhm.
has a son. There's a really interesting, I'll call it a baptism. I don't know if that's the proper term, but like there's a, the little infant child with the gold coin that looks like it's been dipped in
Right.
honey and placed on its lips. And then we jump even forward further in time, and he's got two daughters. That's the family is very prosperous, but it's interesting. We don't see them like move into a larger, like a mansion or a palace or anything. They're still staying very kind of under the radar and humble.
Well, yeah, and it comes out later, not to jump ahead too far, but in chapter 3 too, it comes out later that Raghav is like he's let his house go. He's just focused on getting,
It's Vinayak,
or
yeah.
Vinayak, excuse me. Vinayak has been letting his house go. So even though he's got lots of money, he kind of his house slowly starts to get dilapidated. We learn more of that when we do the time jump into the final chapter, but even you can even kind of see it in this chapter, to where the house isn't exactly kept too much. It's still the same house where we initially were introduced to him, I think. But yeah, his house is not exactly well kept. He doesn't fully like go too overboard with the money. He kind of is a hoarder with his money.
Yeah.
And I think that's to try not to draw too much attention to himself, in all honesty. I think he was afraid of that, and that's probably why he didn't. I mean, he still spent. They were very comfortable, but at the same time, he didn't like go too far out, because I think he didn't want to draw attention that he's got this basically fountain of gold that every time he visits Hastar's got gold in his loincloth.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about this film is the rules and the mythology are ever expanding throughout the runtime. There's never a giant information dump. Like, here's how it all works. By the end of the film, you have an idea of how everything plays out. But the whole loincloth thing, I'm like, okay, how does this gold work? We eventually see Hastar. He literally bends over, and he's got this loincloth that's, it's kind of strapped to his back, but the visual effect is it looks like he's pooping out these gold coins, which
But
I think is very
yeah.
appropriate, because it is just, it it's kind of like foul spoils of gold. He's kind of crapping it out because that's all it is. It's meaningless. It's material stuff, when what Vinayak and Raghav and all the rest should be doing is investing in people and growing their family, instead of just constantly being obsessed over the stuff that this demon is just like crapping out of his butt.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's crapping out of his butt, or if it's just like the sack or whatever that
It is. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying it
it's
is
hard.
coming out of the sack, but the
Right.
position of it is on his lower back. Every time
Right,
the
it
money
looks,
comes out,
yeah,
he's like bent over, almost like a dog,
right.
and the coins kind of shoot like gold diarrhea out of the pouch.
Well, because they bang the pouch. It's not quite clear where the coins come out, but you're right. Yeah, they bang the pouch, and then he tries to pick up as many coins as he can before Hastar finishes the dough doll, which if you paid attention in the opening, it makes sense of why there is the dough doll, because he was denied the grain, and so he hungers for the grain. Hastar has all the gold he wants. He doesn't want to keep the gold. He doesn't care. He's hunger for the grain, and that's what ends up being his downfall. And that's what they drop a couple of times, is saying that Hastar's curse is their boon, basically.
Right, and it works almost the exact opposite, or the equal and opposite effect for the people,
Right.
because the gold that they're hungering for ends up being the thing that destroys them. It's that,
Right.
it's the left hand, right hand thing. But yeah, again, these are little tidbits that we pick up throughout the movie. And Hastar's son, his only son, he begins training him in without telling him anything of what it's about. It's almost like the Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi is having Daniel San like wash the or paint or wash the picket fences, wax on, wax off. He's like, what does this have to do with karate? Well, eventually you find out is that has everything to do with karate. In the case of Vinayak and his son, he's having him practice like climbing up and down ropes and timing, like how quickly he can, get up, get down, grab some like beans or what were they?
No, they were coins.
Were they coins? Okay.
They were coins, but they were not gold coins. They were just basic. They were just rupees, and that's what he would practice. And he was never grabbing enough. Vinayak was just like, yeah, he's useless, and Vinayak's at this point got his mistress, and he's also got his wife still. And it's he's got his money. He's hitting the opium. He is embellishing a little bit more, yet his house is being dilapidated, and he's still going out to get gold coin. That is his hunger.
Right, and we see him get older, and the actor Sohum Shah, I think he does a really great job in this movie. But I think the filmmaker, who I'm sorry we haven't actually mentioned yet, this movie was directed by Rahi Anil Barve. I think tremendously well. And one of the things I liked about our main character is we see him grow older, but just very slightly. You start to see a little bit of gray, a little bit of white in his mustache and his hair, but you can see the toll that this corruption and the gold has taken on him. We also, that gets wrapped up in this kind of the social revolution that's happening kind of in the background. We mentioned, his wife is getting these ideas about, independence and sort of like proto-feminism. She mentions that she's gone to like a liberation march. Later in the film, that's sort of the catalyst for the climax. Vinayak, who, you're right, he has kept a low profile, but people in the area kind of know that he is someone who has money. Like if you need something, you can go to him.
Right.
So there are these like sort of new wave political figures after India has, I guess,
gained its independence.
Its independence, exactly. They come to him and they're like, "Look, you're a very important figure. We want you to be part of this new thing." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's completely clueless as to the political events because he's so obsessed with this gold pursuit, right?
Well, what's interesting is he is so hunger and just obsessed with just getting the gold from the mansion. He never actually claims the mansion, and this comes out later because they play at the fact that we know he is the bastard son of the mansion, of the owner of the mansion originally. So technically, it is his. In fact, when he was younger, he's like, "Why can't we claim this mansion? It should be mine. I'm his kid." And the mom's like, "Yeah, no, we're not doing that." And then he comes back and we find out he still never claimed the mansion, maybe still trying to keep the low profile. Apparently he was paying off though, because he was making, this guy has just he's got money. I mean, he technically didn't need to keep going for the gold, but that's would miss the point with the film, is that the gold is just hunger. The greed is so powerful that even though he didn't need it, he would still go back and get the gold. And he was using it to pay off the governors, like 7 of them or whatever, of the territory. But when they get independent, it got turned over to the new India government. So he's like, well, crap, there goes my golden goose, basically, in a way. And so that's where he grabs his son and he's like, yeah, you know what? You're not ready at all. You're not ready at all for this, but we're going to go do this because it's going to probably be the last time we could do this. I mean, people even talk to him and say, you could still claim it. And he doesn't. He donates the money that he has, more money to the this new government. And he decides to go out there and get one last run at the gold.
Right. And he takes his son and he doesn't, like, he never tells the kid what he's in for until they're down there in the chasm, and things don't go very well. They meet up with Hastar, and that's around the time, I think, or it's not long before that, where we really get the significance of these dough dolls. Right. And the idea is they bring one with them because they shove it, they throw it at Hastar. It eats the dough doll so it doesn't eat them. And it distracts them just long enough so they can scrounge around and get as many coins as they can and then get up the rope. Hence those timed exercises. That's why he's
Right.
like, you didn't get enough and you didn't get enough in time because you would have been devoured by this beast by now. There is sort of a circle of protection on the ground where they are that buys them a little bit of time. But as we find out in the climax of the film, that circle of protection basically just works on the ground. It does not form a shaft of protection going up.
All the way to the rope. No, but it's a dome. It's like a dome of protection, really.
Right.
But yeah.
And that's kind of again, you think you know the rules of this thing, and then they just throw more stuff at you. Like, what happens if Hastar touches the dome or interacts with it? Well, we find out, and it looks like okay. I'll get to some comments in a few minutes, but it looks like we've got David Wilton here. I don't think he's seen the movie, so you might want to come back later because we're going to talk about something kind of spoilery soon. But it's a nice little detail where Vinayak and his son are down there. They don't get the as much as they had wanted to. So
Well,
Vinayak,
because they were going. Don't mean to cut you off. Because
no,
they
yeah,
were going down to practice. Because he brought his son to practice, and
that's right. Yeah,
he told his son, "Don't bring the dough if you don't bring the dough," because he wanted him to get the lay of the land. He just wanted him to get an idea of the area where he's going to be doing this, but he didn't want to bring Hastar out. But the kid snuck a dough doll, and that's where
he thought he was being all helpful, like
right.
hey, I've got this thing, and that's the monster attacks both, and they narrowly get out of there, and then I think they go back home, and there's a bit of an intermission there in terms of the next before the next mission, and I believe it's around this time when we get a sense of just how messed up this kid is because of his father's obsession, because he's got a gold coin that his dad gives him. And he's like, this thing is very valuable. He's like, how much could I get for it? And he's like, just don't.
Yeah.
But he takes this coin to the mistress, and says, hey, one day, I'm going to be a man and I'm going to marry you. And she essentially, laughs at him. And then the dad kind of finds out about it. And he's like, look, you've got time, you don't need to worry about her. And he's like, what am I going to do? You're not going to get married right now, not until you're much older. And he's like, what am I going to do in the meantime? Cut to him taking this kid to like a brothel and like dancing around with all these women.
They're
And
just hanging with the women, though. He's not having sex, but yeah, he takes them to
hey,
a place of entertainment.
given that this movie essentially opens with a hand job, I'm not going to put anything past past the screenplay. There's stuff that we don't see, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. One thing that I noticed, there are these, like, I think 3 times in the movie we see these warnings about how smoking is hazardous to your health. Did you see these pop up on the
They
on the
popped up
screen?
occasionally. Yeah.
I love that is the, yes, smoking is bad for your health. So is hanging out with prostitutes. So is getting involved with,
But
loan sharks. So
hanging out with prostitutes is not bad for your health. It's after
as long as if
party.
you wrap it up, sure. But
Yeah, you just have a drink. There's nothing wrong with that. It's possible activities afterwards where you might
yeah,
run
Mark,
into problems.
you are on record as being prostitute.
That's prostitute. That's right.
But no, so eventually they go back, and Dad is getting very frustrated because the coins, there's like not enough to satisfy his desires, and like it's diminishing returns. There's less and less. So the son is like, well, Dad, why don't we just take a whole bunch of these
Take the entire loincloth. Yeah, we just take the loin belt. Just the entire
they
pack.
yes, sorry, the loincloth. It's weird because I watched this movie like 15 hours ago.
Oh,
Very early.
yeah.
You watched it more recently than I.
I
So I've got
literally
notes.
watched it more. Yeah, the kid on their way. The kid decides, "Hey, let's get the bag," and the dad's like, "Well, how are we going to do that? We're going to have to make a number of dough dolls," and so they make a lot of dough dolls. And again, this goes right along with the rules. You keep learning about the rules along with your characters. You soon find out that yeah, if you make more dough dolls,
You make more demons.
you draw out more hot stars. So it's not like you've got just one, you've got one for every dough doll, which
And that is a
yeah,
great reveal. I mean, because they pull out the one and you see him appear, and then he pulls out the second one, and the second one appears, and you just get that look on Vinayak's face. Like, I think it goes from the dolls, like pans up to his face, and you see that kind of like that realization,
right.
or yeah, and then you just
And then
realize
he
how many
drops
they have.
and then he drops, because you're fine until you reveal the dough doll in the room. So you can have the dough doll like in a pack, a bag or a sack or whatever. But what ends up happening is he sees two, because they have two dough dolls, and he's like, oh crap. And then their bag of dough dolls gets dropped, and suddenly there's hot stars everywhere inside the room. And the dad's like, well, shit.
And then that we're kind of like in the heart of the climax of the film here,
Mhm.
right? So eventually dad takes it on himself to make a break for it. He leaves his
Mhm.
son down in the circle. Dad climbs up on the rope by strapping all of the dough dolls to his body and then making a run for it, knowing that the Hostar demons are going to pursue him, and they do. Eventually, the kid makes it out. Now, I don't want to spoil. I know most of the people watching this have probably already seen the film, but we'll just, for those who haven't, we'll just leave kind of the end, because I think it is rather poetic and surprising. Because I think in an American film, an American horror movie, or at least a mainstream one, it would have ended with the curse is going to go on, and the characters wouldn't really evolve that much. But I think there's
Mhm.
sort of a touching evolution. There's some goodness in the kid. He hasn't been fully corrupted by what his dad and this town has kind of put him through. But I was very surprised by how this thing resolved itself.
I like the way it resolved itself. I really did. It was a surprise, but in a good way. And it did make it did make sense. The gold did corrupt. I mean, the kid going after dad's mistress because he had the one coin, it was alluding to the fact that this was a good kid, and he, by just getting the one coin from Hostar, uh, it already was starting to corrupt him as a youth. But what's interesting is it did move him up in his dad's eyes, which was interesting because his dad was saying he was useless. But then the kid actually managed, even though their botched first attempt, it managed to get a coin. And his dad's like, yeah, no, you keep it. And by him keeping it, that's where he gets a little. So seeing what the kid does at the end was a nice surprise, because it's like, he's still young. He's got a little more strength than ye older man. And yeah, and I liked how that went.
Well, also the relationship between the boy and his mother. I mean, we've seen how many
Right.
films and horror movies have we seen where there's an obsessive, abusive dad and the mom and the son that she's trying to raise and protect. Usually the boy or the daughter, whoever, is going to stand up to the dad, the bully, and in the name of
Right.
protecting the mother. That's not the case at all in this movie.
Mm-mm.
The mom is constantly put upon, abused, talked back to. She does kick out the maid, or at least she tries to, but that that
Right.
relationship doesn't go anywhere. And even like the son is so obsessed with becoming like the dad, and going on these like weird training things and bizarre exercises, that the mom's almost an afterthought.
Mhm.
I'd almost be curious to see like an epilogue, like him going back to Pune and seeing what shakes out there. But we've been talking a lot about like plot and character and stuff, but there's some comments here which I do want to pull over, because they're going to lead us into some, I think, other
Sure.
areas that really, again, surprised me and knocked me out about this movie. So we're going to start off with the one that came in before the show even started. Diogirl Yadav says, where is Sadar Udam movie? 4 question marks. It's not here, because we are talking about Tumbbad. But and wait for another after this next comment, we'll get you some closure there. Hey, says Eli Glasner. Hey. Amal Singh says, Sardar Udam, review next, please. Done. So I think officially next month. I don't know what that movie is, but I'm gonna put that up to watch and
historical
review that.
drama.
What? Let me guess. It starts in 1918.
It's about a revolutionary freedom fighter best known for assassinating Michael O'Dwyer in London to take revenge for 1919 massacre. So yeah, again.
Okay, so we're going from 1918 to 1919. So after like 70 movies, we'll be almost contemporary.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so David Wilt says, sounds like a lot of the story of Midas, where he wishes everything he touches transforms to gold. Very much so. Vasudevan Srinivasan says, how cool is the village setting in the landscape? Yes, this is why I wanted to get through these comments, is because this is where I'm kind of conflicted, and I am perfectly willing to sound like an absolute idiot, because as I mentioned, this is my second foray into the wide world of Indian cinema. So I can imagine it'd be like someone watching American horror films for the first time, or genre films, and just seeing something that, this movie could be, Halloween 5 as far as as far as quality goes, but for me it's brand new and it's awesome and it's gorgeous. So I don't know how this film rates among genre aficionados kind of overseas, but yeah, I loved the, exotic is the wrong word and it's probably offensive, but just the stepping into a culture that I am not familiar with and seeing, yes, the costuming, the sets. I mean, I don't even know if I can call them sets because they look like real places. I know Tumbbad is an actual place, because the Amazon trivia popped up, I think, at the very end of the movie to say that it is an actual place, but there is no curse. But then it got kind of cute by saying that, but if there was a curse, we wouldn't know about it because the whole deal is Hastar can never be talked about or worshipped.
Right.
So yeah, I just the cultural insight, the characters, I think the all the performances just really spot on, and it makes me wonder, are a lot of genre films, like horror films in India, of this caliber? I didn't see any like dumb teenagers talking on cell phones and getting knocked off by an axe murderer in this or a ghost for that matter. This is very much a mature movie that's about a lot of things, a historical drama ghost horror movie. Mark, we just got done watching that.
Yeah. It's it's definitely, especially after you go from watching something like Halloween Ends to this, but it's a different type of story, and this is why I enjoy international cinema quite a bit, because with it being another culture, there's different mythologies, different approaches on what's scary. We were talking before the show how was it? I think the movie's called Master Salt Begins, a screener I just recently reviewed that is very it has Buddha origins, but they talk about demons, and they use some other terminology that we use here, but the way it was being used didn't mean necessarily that it was evil. It was just a description. Whereas here, the minute you see demon, you think revolving heads and spitting pea soup puke and all kinds of stuff, so it is very interesting to see this type of how this handles basically a horror movie, a supernatural horror film. It's like a gothic horror quite a bit, to where not to jump too far ahead in your comments, but yeah, there's it not really jump scares, but it's still creepy and unnerving, and it still has its morality play, which is what a lot of good horror films actually are.
Right, and I think the horror of it comes not from, we mentioned Cronenberg, and there's a CGI demon and all that stuff, but I think what is most affecting is the stuff. It's almost like The Shining, not necessarily the film, but the Stephen King novel, where it's about someone dealing with alcoholism and that kind of obsession, and this kind of failed, doomed life and what that does to a family. We see that here in Tumbbad, and it plays out with, this kind of sad, tragic drama. You're just watching it and wishing someone would just like tap, Vinayak on the shoulder and say, look, you realize that this is all, you have enough.
Yeah. Yeah. You're good. You're really good.
But it also reminds me of a film that I watched last week that I talked about, an independent film, a Dogma 95 film from the year 2000, actually, called Chet Smoka's Curse, which is about a town in, I believe it was Seattle or outside of Seattle or somewhere in Washington, where it rained all the time. And a Native American put a curse on the settlers that if you actually settle here and run us out, everyone who lives here will forever be miserable. And if they leave, they will always want to come back. So they literally cannot escape the misery. And that reminded me of Tumbbad. Now, we don't get a sense of Tumbbad as a place beyond just the walls of this kind of mansion, this estate. There's no like outerlying town. We get that in Pune, which is a completely different atmosphere.
Yeah, and well, they even talk about how later on in the final chapter, how they're going to basically level the mansion and build a village there, a couple villages on this land. So this Tumbbad is a large place that's mostly the mansion, maybe some settlement, some residential stuff around it, but it's not really a full village. But I loved the setting of Tumbbad. It was its own character for sure.
And it's almost surreal, like when we see Raghav, as I mentioned, going, in through the giant gates, and then he goes down, and then he finds the kind of the crypt, and he opens up. That he keeps going down and down and down. It almost seems like an optical illusion. Like, how deep does this go? And then you realize that the opening story said this is essentially the goddess of prosperity, and her womb is the earth. So
yeah,
it's almost like a fable, like going down to the center of the earth, or into the bowels of hell in some sense.
Yeah, and it almost hell, in a sense.
But Eli Glasner also writes, budget of the movie was $630,000 American. Cool product, under $1 million. And RRR was something ridiculous, like as far as being a quote unquote low budget movie by Hollywood standards. It just makes me wonder, because Tumbbad does not look like it cost under $1 million to make.
No, it's the way it's shot, the way the settings is. If you actually pay attention, there's actually not a lot of locations. But it's the way they shoot it, the way they handle the material, the way they handle the locations, shooting from multiple angles, from above angles, lower angles, different, different cameras for the same area, making it seem even bigger than it is. They make the most of their budget. This is from a discussion that we were talking about when I was at the Horror Fest, actually, about how sometimes these filmmakers have too much money on their hands, and it actually ends up being a detriment, versus indie cinema, which has to get creative. And here as well, they get creative. You get enough establishing shots, beautiful establishing shots with the cinematography, to establish where you're at, but then the camera stays fairly close to the characters. You don't get a huge amount of exploration of the sets where you're at. You catch them, but it's an efficient use is what it is. And in all honesty, I think as well, the big difference is, and we've talked about it too with Earth's Mightiest Critics, the marketing. The budget, I think, for Hollywood films, a good chunk of it is marketing and just straight up capitalism. Not to say that there isn't elsewhere in any other industry. It's in every entertainment industry, but I think, it just, they have, the resources they have, they make the most of. And, I like this type of filmmaking, because this film definitely does not feel like a $630K film, which makes it even more awesome. So,
right. It just makes you kind of wonder, like, what, we talk about independent filmmakers and stuff, and people trying to, make it big in Hollywood. What what if there was a Hollywood division or a smaller studio or an arm of a studio that said, hey, here's under $1 million, make the next Tumbbad. And they're like,
Yeah.
we need 5 million. You get $1 million or you get a half a
Yeah.
million. I want something like this in a year.
Mhm.
You can do it.
Well, I
it's
don't
much more
know if
interesting.
I don't know if India's film industry, because I'm very green with it as well. I've watched a number of films, but as far as the inner workings of the entertainment industry there, I don't know if they've got a union or whatnot. Unions and such that are, and they don't have Scientology there, I don't think. So that could be the inflated prices right there, is everybody's got to pay their fee for Scientology in Hollywood, and you don't have to worry about that overseas. So
So you're saying Avengers Endgame, which was a $250 million movie, actually cost like $2 million to make?
well, $250 million because of everybody they had in it. So let's them salaries, man.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. David Wilt again says, if you guys ever see that classic film, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, the plot of the movie also involves gold fever. I have never seen Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I think I own it, or maybe I'm thinking of Nectar Falcon. It's some Bogart
it's a great
movie.
It's a great movie. Yeah, it does cover that idea of gold fever as well.
I'll have to check that out. Not for this series, but at some point I just got to watch it. And then Eli says, how about the cinematography to shoot in rain all the time? This does have a great look to it, and there is an oppressiveness and a grayness to the rain that really feeds into the kind of the spiraling downward obsession of everybody who gets the kind of the gold fever. I guess it wasn't a nitpick, and I wasn't involved in the making of this film, so I can't say for sure. But a lot of the times, it did feel like the kind of the rain machines, it just had that kind of quality to it. But I realized I was watching a movie, and it's a damn good one. So I don't even why did I bring that up? I don't want to tear this movie down. This movie has less jump scares, however, keeps you on the edge of your seat. Yes,
agreed.
And it's not because again, it's not really scary. I was on the edge of my seat because I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know how these characters are going to end up, treating each other or facing off against the demons, external or internal. It's all about, this is a story that's like 90% characterization, 5% atmosphere, and 5%, monsters, I guess.
Yeah, it's something in general. I mean, it's you're wondering when that shoe is going to drop with the dad and the kid. You're wondering when things are going to go fall apart. It goes along with what I found interesting, and again, a different approach, I think, to filmmaking and to stories, is that it still stayed focused on the gold. I think if this got a Western right or whatever, we would have explored like a good 20-25 minutes of the effect of this on the family, the guy's behavior in the family or whatnot. But we really only get bits here and there, enough to get the idea of it. Like you said, the wife, especially in chapter 2, and even all like a quarter of the way through chapter 3, we don't even see her character again. We see the dad with with his mistress, but we don't actually see the mom much anymore for most of the film, and then she appears again. Whereas I think in the Western one, you would have had some blowout. You would have had, him in the gutter. You know what I mean? I mean, they would have tried to expound on the whole effects of the family and try to bring more of that. And here it stayed focused, but it still gave you enough to go, yeah, this is ruining his relationship with his family. But we don't go like heavy all drama into what's going on with the family. We get just enough.
Well, that's because Barve does the smart thing, which is tie the theme directly into the way that he tells the story.
Right.
Because we see less and less of the family as the movie goes on, except for the son, which the dad is using to get to the gold. As I mentioned, like when we do another time jump, it's like, wait, he's got 2 daughters now. We don't even know their names. I don't think we hear them speak. The wife essentially disappears because it eventually becomes all about this guy's obsession. He's like, oh yeah, I got a family, whatever. oh
Mhm.
yeah, the town is, or the government's going to take away my mansion, whatever. I just got to get to the gold. I got to get to the gold. It's just this obsession that the movie almost brings us into it as co-conspirators. We're not. I forgot about the family element until after it was over. Like, oh, that's right. The kid's got to go home to his mom.
Yeah.
Um, so Eli also says, I guess you wouldn't be routing to any one character the end uh, at the end of the movie. That's a miss in the movie, as you won't be connected, sympathetic to any character. I I will slightly disagree in that I felt bad for the son because I feel like the decision that he makes sort of sets himself free
Mhm.
potentially. We don't know. Again, we don't know what happens when he goes back to the village. Um, but I felt bad because his life had been, up until that point, had been pretty ruined, and he had to make a terrible decision at the end, and that's going to mess him up for a long time. Hopefully, he finds some redemption or a connection with his family. But geez, what a
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, I know. I mean, the kid does make, when he first gets the gold, he does let the corruption in, but by the end, I think you get this little mini redemption arc. You're not with him for a long time versus our main character, but if there's anybody you would have sympathy for who actually has a long enough screen time, it's the kid. You
Yeah.
could with the mom, but you don't see her enough really to, and I get what Eli is saying. You're not really with her long enough to really connect. I mean, you feel bad for her, but she's you're imagining what's happening off screen. We don't see a huge amount of what's going on with her. It's the son, I guess, that would be probably the most sympathetic, the one who's in front of the camera the longest outside of the dad, that you feel sympathetic for. But it's in this little niche that he goes through this arc versus the course of the full movie. So, but for a lot of the movie, yeah, there was no character I commit. You're like, yeah, fucking demon eat him. That's
But I think that's a testament to our lead actor, because he was so, I don't know, I guess handsome, kind of oddly charismatic, and I also didn't know exactly what he was going to do or how he was going to end up.
Mhm.
That it's, again, it's kind of like Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Right.
He is a complete asshole who just becomes a larger asshole and a
Asshole.
homicidal one, but you can't keep your eyes off him, primarily because it's Jack Nicholson, and also
Right.
because Stephen King and then Barve in this film, along with he was a co-writer, takes us into this obsession, kind of makes us understand and makes us, again, kind of co-conspirators. So I
Mhm.
know where time is kind of running short here, so I do want to get back to one last comment, which is going to bring us full circle.
Bring
Beautiful.
us full circle.
Yes, like the giant round belly of the goddess of prosperity, full circle. Eli says, yes, Sarah Udom suggested in the comments is a very good movie and best movie to come out of the India in the year 2020. 70% of the movie is in English and available in Amazon Prime. This is another wonderful thing. There's so many of these films that we're going to be talking about that are available for free on, or quote unquote free on, streaming services. I mean, half the movies we talk about on the spoiler remark, I have to pay like $4 to rent, but
Oh, make me feel guilty now. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate the guilt. Thank you. All
hey,
right.
you
You
can
know.
take it because you are the backbone of Wisconsin
Oh
horror.
God, here we go. I want to say one thing, and I
Yeah.
think it's something that I was just thinking about. And we got a little time yet, but it was just something that I was thinking about, that our main character, Reddick, um, the reason why, or excuse me, Vinayak, uh, why he went back, because he had a coin. He had a coin as a kid. His mom gave him the coin. And just by, we saw what happens to his son when he had just one coin.
Hmm.
That really started the obsession. And I kind of like that. If you think about it again, you're just like, well, what, obviously the legend, was there, but what really drove him, uh, 14 years later or 15 years later to come back? Well, yeah, he had a coin. He had a coin, and that coin is from Hastar, and that gold corrupts. It makes you hungry for the gold, and it brings it back around. So yeah, I like how that, it's kind of subtle, but if you pay attention, you're like, oh, that's why. You know, he's not just going back to the mansion to like claim his, uh, the title because Dad finally died and he's finally old enough to claim the mansion back. No, he's back because he got a taste of that gold and he wants more.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's so weird. It is almost like a greater commentary on material obsession. I mean,
Mhm.
you look behind me, you look behind you on camera. We've got books and old televisions and DVDs, for crying out loud, just kind of piling up things that we might look at every once in a while, but they're almost like these totems, these trophies to things that we love. But what at what cost? I mean, not to get too heavy here, but how we could have been spending this money that we to buy all these things and taking our kids on amazing trips to Paris, or go skydiving, or having these great adventures. But at some point we get wrapped up in our own obsessions, and I think everybody has those obsessions, but the message of this movie is to have a balance and not to let that gold glint or the shiny object or the newest collectible become the focus of your life, because there are greater things, and by things I mean people, that you should be investing in.
No, this is my investment. My kids can scrounge for themselves. They can
Nice.
sell all of this. They can
Okay.
sell all this when I pass. They'll make I mean, most of my collection is buck and a quarter tree. So, well, now it's buck and a quarter tree, but it was Dollar Tree. So,
Mark, can I ask you a question? Do you
Mhm.
have a habit of taking the bus to places and disappearing for a couple of days at a time?
I probably would end up disappearing if I didn't know if my wife would track me down and say, "Get your ass back home." So,
Instead of Tumbbad, it's the world's largest Dollar Tree. Yeah,
that's right. And like, look at this DVD section. Get your ass back. Okay, yes, dear.
Well, this has been our discussion of Tumbbad. I hope those out there who love the movie watched this, maybe got something out of it. At the very least, didn't think that we looked like complete fools in our,
Hopefully
kind of
we
brand new
did it.
stepping into it. Yeah.
Yes.
But we are big appreciators of this movie. I loved it. And I definitely want to watch it again. It's also the kind of horror movie, aside from some of the demon stuff, that I feel like I could show my wife and not have her be completely freaked out, and maybe even kind of impressed by the depth of the story and characters in it. So yeah, big points there.
Outside of the one, what happens to Regev? Outside of that one scene, you could easily, this would be a gateway horror film easily.
Yeah.
To someone who might be want to ease them into it. You could definitely do this one for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm
welcome.
going to give you the chance to do what you give to me every Tuesday night when I come onto the Spoiler Room live stream. I'm going to give you the license to shill, sir. What do you got going on?
Specialmarkproductions.com. If you're at all interested in what I do, I've done a lot more interviews this year than I have in previous years. Plus, I'm working on footage from the festivals from the last 2 weeks. I'm behind on some reviews, but I got an interview that I just dropped for the guy who for Sean Burkett, who made the film Don't Fuck in the Woods and Don't Fuck in the Woods 2. Pardon my French, but that is the title of the. I interviewed him. It was a great interview. I've got 2 more interviews coming up next week. I've got a slew of reviews coming. We do our podcast. We do the live streams. In fact, we'll be doing next month for our Cinema Serpentis, which is snake horror month. We're going to be covering Hiss. So that's going to be interesting for anyone who may be familiar with that film. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff. But if you just go to specialmarkproductions.com, that'll get you the link to our YouTube, our Patreon, and the podcast. So,
excellent. Well, thank you again for coming and hanging out. Next month, I don't know if you'll be joining us for all these or some more of Earth's Mightiest Critics. We're going to come back, or maybe it'll just be me. I don't know. Talking about Sardar Udom, if I didn't butcher that name, because that has been recommended vociferously here in the chat. So we'll be talking about that. In the meantime, if you liked this content, this live stream, please feel free to like and subscribe to Kicking the Seat. Also, Mark's information will be down in the description, so give him a like and a subscribe too. He's got great stuff and a very passionate film critic and all-around great dude. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here and go get something to drink that's not coffee. I got to slow down. But yeah, until next time, whatever that is, thank you very much for tuning in, for hanging out, and yeah, take care. And broadcast now. Let's do it.